So we're at the top of the hour here, folks. So thanks for joining JASCI's webinar series today. Our session is going to be talking about put walls and our trouble stations. So we're going to be reviewing our PutWall order management and the viewpoint and loading screens associated with those. The PutWall process, including our put workflows, right? The types of put walls that you traditionally see across our customer base, right? Some of them use them in different ways, whether that's typically using manual put walls, where they'd use maybe some totes from UPS or whatnot. Some of our customers are using lighted put walls today and automated solutions as well, which we're going to show you a bit of today, as well as going into our trouble station. So without further ado, we'll be monitoring the question and answer chat. So just let us know if there's any questions along the way, okay? Joe, I'll hand things over to you and we can kick things off.
Yeah, thanks, James. So we're going to start actually by talking about the third item there, the types of put walls. And we're going to talk about how they're used within a warehouse. So if James, you want to go to the next slide. So a put wall, it's going to be an area of your warehouse that you've dedicated to sort and consolidate orders prior to shipping. This would be rather than picking these orders, as we call it, discreetly or one at a time, or where you send a cart and you go pick several orders at a time. This allows you to pick items in batches of common items or items that are close to each other in storage, and you bring those batches over to the wall. And then on the put wall is where you take those items out of the batches and put them to a slot or a cube on the put wall. And that's going to represent the order coming together. One of those cubes would be receiving all of the items for that order. So in that, you see the time that it takes. You have a little bit of added time and touches for taking these batches and putting them to the wall. But on the other side, during the picking process, it actually allows you to pick a lot more orders with the same amount of people and with less time by being able to batch individual items together that then get quickly sorted out at the put wall. So most e-commerce companies are going to be able to benefit from having a put wall, unless your order volume and line count doesn't really call for it. But if you're picking any kind of a quantity of orders that have either multiple items in it or picks from multiple zones or multiple sides of the warehouse, having a put wall will add a tremendous amount of labor savings for you. So James, if you want to go to the next screen, we'll talk about a few different types of put walls. So there's what we call manual put walls, which are just going to be basically cubbies. And by the way, when we say wall, this can refer to really any grid system. It could be floor locations. It could be like you see on the screen here, like cubbies or boxes. It's really just us designating that there's areas that you're going to be putting these items to, and each one of those cubes or areas is going to represent an order coming together. Now, on the right side of the screen, you'll see what we call light controlled put walls. So each one of those cubes not only will have an ID, so your person knows where they're putting stuff, but it's instead of having to constantly look at the device or look at a screen and see where you're going to put each item as you scan it, with a lighted put wall, you're going to scan the item, and we're going to be able to talk to those lights on the wall and light up the light on the cube where you're putting the order to. So it becomes very mindless, very easy to do. You pick up an item, you scan it, and then wherever the light lights up, you go and you physically put the item, and then you press the button to confirm that you put it there. So it actually tremendously increases your put speed when you have a lighted put wall. It also makes it just much easier on the people doing the putting because they're not having to constantly turn and look at a screen and have the possibility of, looking at the wrong number, scanning the wrong cube, things like that. So you really see a lot of efficiency gains when you add lights to the scenario. And that's something that JASCI does with a bunch of our customers today. Yeah, and now if you could just go ahead and go on to the next slide, we'll talk about the third type of put walls, which is going to be the automated solution. So these are going to be like sortation systems. There's a lot of distributors out there of those different systems, and JASCI will work perfectly with them. We'll use both our put wall logic and our ability to interface with a wide range of robotics. That's something that we're definitely known for is our ability to work with several or multiple systems. Now we have one shown here, like an example of a Mushini sortation system. This is going to be like our put wall on steroids, where it's using the same concept to get orders together, to get bins together of the orders, but without having to do as much of the interaction with the wall. You're simply inducting items, and the wall is taking care of the sortation process. So it gets even faster. It can produce a high amount of order turnout, and you're just simply picking batches, maybe even bringing entire cases over to a solution like this. Another common one that you'll see out there is the Tompkins system, their T-sort. And if anyone's ever curious to see some of these solutions in action using the robotics, anything we talk about in these webinars, please reach out to us. We're always happy to give you references and to show you different solutions that we think would work for your warehouse. So that would be a more automated system, having like a sortation robotics involved, but it's still using the same concept of our put walls. So that's a little bit of what we wanted to show you. So James, if you could just go back 2 slides to that first one I started talking on, I just want to talk a little bit more about the put walls and like why and when you would use them. So we talked about what the efficiency gain is. You're able to pick in batches and then quickly sort them out to a large volume of orders. But also, you're going to use these for certain order profiles. There might be certain scenarios where just picking the order altogether makes more sense. A common scenario that we see in JASCI for a put wall is if you have picks that are coming from multiple sides of the warehouse and you want to split that warehouse into picking zones. Rather than sending someone across zones or doing a pick and pass, what we would do is recognize that that order has allocated items from across multiple zones, and we'll give it an actual put wall work type. And so all of those put wall work type picks will be fed to a wall as opposed to a single or a discrete or like a pallet pick or any other pick that's going to go on its normal path to either a pack station or to your loading docks. But if you need some sort of consolidation, we would give it a work type that drives it to the put wall. Another example of this, aside from like the picking in multiple zones, is if you have an additional process that needs to happen to the items after you've picked them. We have a few customers that do apparel decoration, for example. So they actually use the put wall as a way to get their blank items dropped off to that wall, and then they can do their decoration process. Maybe they're doing embroidery, maybe they're putting some, printing something on the apparel or the item. And then after they've got it decorated, they move it on from the put wall to the pack station. So the put wall can be used for multiple ways, but at the end of the day, it's an area to consolidate all of the items that are getting tied to orders. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the system and talk a little bit about the setup and how you get orders sent to the wall. So James, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. If you could confirm that it's sharing.
Yep, we can see on my side.
Okay, great. So if you look at our software here, and we've done a bunch of webinars going through the inbound, the inventory, and the outbound. Today, the put wall, it's going to be in an outbound menu profile, and we have a few items to talk about here. We're going to go to the viewpoint put wall to kind of see what's happening at my put wall in my demo environment in just a moment. But first, we're going to go into our put wall selection to show how they're built systematically. So if we go into our put wall wizard, we can see that the first thing that we're going to choose about this wall is the put wall type. So we have in here if it's going to be manual or if it's lights. If it's going to be with the robotics, we do it more of a like similar to our manual, but instead of having our users confirm all of the scans and everything, the robotics are handling that portion of it. If it's going to be connected to lights, for example, like the ATOP lights, then what we would be doing is in the workflow, we put in an execution that calls that light system and lights up the particular light that we need to. Um, Now you're going to give it a put wall ID. This is going to be the name of your put wall, but it's also going to be a way that your users operating at the put wall can declare which put wall that they're putting at. And then it can also be the ID that shows up for a picker on which put wall to drop the pick off to. So you can have multiple walls set up. You can have walls that handle different types of orders, different types of products. You can just have, several walls throughout the warehouse that are just easier to access based on where you're picking from. So that put wall ID is going to be important for a few things. You'll have a description for it as well, short and long. Now, another thing we want to talk about with the put walls is if it's going to be a single side or multi-side put wall. The difference here is with a single side put wall, as you put the final item into that cube, you're then going to pull the whole cube or the tote that's in that cube out of its location and bring it to the pack station. So that's going to be a single side wall, meaning that as you've put the last item in there, you're bringing it to the pack. If it's a multi-side wall, your person that's doing the putting, as they put the last item in there, they're simply going to push it to the other side of the wall, push it through. So there's going to be a group of people or a person on the other side of the wall that's going to be grabbing these totes that are pushed through and performing the pack. So you can get a lot of efficiency out of that because it keeps your putters just constantly putting items onto the wall, and they don't have to worry about having any foot travel to the pack station. And then if you just have a single side wall, which is a little bit more common because you don't have to have your warehouse perfectly set up for it, then you're just simply going to bring the totes to the pack station after they're sorted. And typically you're going to keep your put wall relatively close to your pack stations so that the travel time doesn't become a burden. That's the whole point of using a put wall is to reduce the amount of travel time that your team is taking to pick and ship an order. Now down here you have the number of levels and the number of slots. That's going to be your rows and your columns. So you can declare how big of a table or how big of a put wall that you're creating. How many different cubbies or cubes there's going to be. Now, each one of those cubes will have a default container, and you're going to be able to choose which container that you put on that put wall. And you can actually specify by row what size or what type of container you want. So maybe you have a put wall where your large items, you're going to focus on putting those on the bottom. You could actually set your bottom row to have a particular container ID that is for those larger items or different types of items or different carrier, etc. You can have different behaviors for your different container IDs, which influence which orders go to the put wall. You can also declare your priority level for orders to default to. So if you're not filling the entire wall with orders, maybe you don't have enough orders to fill the wall, which cubes is it going to prioritize first? You can declare the level that you want. So that would be kind of like your waist height or chest height cubes that are going to be kind of like your golden zone in your pick and put areas. Now, down here you have the percent to load. So this would be a percentage of the wall of once it's open and completed with the previous orders and open for more orders. This would be like a percentage where we load an entire new batch to the wall. The put wall orders getting loaded to the wall is what's going to allow the items to be picked by the pickers. So once it's got an available cube at the wall, the items are eligible to be batched by the pickers, and they can go ahead and pick everything. So you're going to want to choose a percentage to where you're not overflowing your wall with items that were picked, but you also don't have your putters waiting around too long for the pickers to finish their pick paths and drop stuff off. So you want to find that perfect percentage for when you want the wall to be reloaded. Some people just want, as soon as there's open cubes, they want orders to be released and loaded in. Some want to do it more in waves so that their pickers, maybe they can go out and pick more at once, if depending on your volume. You can also declare a minimum or maximum quantity for the amount of items in an order in one of these cubes. So if you have, you occasionally get orders that have like, 50 products in it or something, or 50 items in it. Maybe you don't want those going to the put wall, so you declare a maximum quantity. Maybe you want to set up a wall specifically for those orders and you set a minimum quantity. Now down here, you can also see we have the same concept with order cube, minimum and maximum. We also have the ability to declare if you're assigning a license plate number or if you're just simply using that cube ID as the license plate. Now, I always recommend using a license plate number because if you assign an LPN to that tote in the cube, when you go to pull that tote and bring it to the pack station, you can simply scan that LPN and confirm everything is packed rather than having to do an additional confirmation on all items. With the put wall, you're confirming all of your puts with the system. So typically, a lot of our customers, they don't want to have an additional touch point at pack where all the things get touched again. If you do, that's great. You can have it in there. But if you use an LPN at the put wall, you can simply scan that LPN to ship out the entire order with just simply one scan. And then we have a few other things like, are you gonna uh, allocate, when we load the put wall, maybe you want to go ahead and just allocate the items before we've loaded them, the order to the put wall. And, you might create a big build up there at the wall. And we have a few other settings as well that you can select about these. So that's how you're going to create a put wall. You can also have a schedule for the put wall. So maybe you want to use it at certain times of the day or certain times of the year. Maybe you have like a season where it's either close to Black Friday and the holidays and you're just pumping out way more orders. Maybe you have certain seasonal products where people are ordering this product combined with some of the other things that you normally have, and they're creating a lot of multi-line or multi-SKU orders. Um, maybe you want that to be when you have the put wall up. So you can choose different times of the year, and then maybe you only want to run the put wall during one shift, and then the night shift you don't have anyone picking on the wall. You just have them picking discreetly. So we have a schedule system for when you want the wall to be run. So let's go ahead and look at one of these put walls in the system. I talked about the viewpoint for the put wall earlier. If we click viewpoint put wall, this is going to show you a 50 cube wall that I've set up. So you can see it's 5 rows by 10 columns wide. So that's going to give you 50 individual cubes. At its maximum, I'll be able to consolidate 50 different orders at this cube. Now, if we click on one of these cubes, you can see it'll highlight it for me, and then I have all of my buttons available. So we can say that, we've identified trouble with this order. Maybe we don't have the SKU anywhere that was supposed to be picked for this item, and it says it was picked, but it wasn't. Maybe we noticed something about the items themselves that we put, like maybe there's damage. Maybe we just noticed something about this order that we want to go ahead and send it to trouble, which we're going to talk about the trouble station in just a moment. We can choose if we want to mark a cube as inactive, or if we want to disable it, momentarily. We have the ability to refresh the viewpoint on this wall. We can filter down by things. We can set our preferences, which our preferences, we can actually choose what color we want everything to turn. We have a color scheme up top that tells you if it's ready for an order, if it's ready to pull, if it's ready to push, if you're doing a multi-side wall. Different colors are going to represent its status, but we also have some statuses on aging. So when it's a certain amount of minutes from when it was assigned, it'll turn yellow. When it becomes a certain amount of minutes from when it was assigned, it'll become red. And then you can have it blink when it's a certain percentage complete. You can also have, since you can have multiple walls, you could choose if you want to display all put walls or not and simply scroll through them. If you don't want to display all put walls and you just always want to have one come up when you go to this viewpoint, you can choose which one you want to default. Um, and if it's a multi-side, you can default if you want it to view the front or the back first. You can set your refresh rate, and then also you can display a put wall zone. So if you have these set up by zone, you can display all the put walls within a particular zone. Um, we also have some notes if you want to take any notes about it. We have the lookup. Let me go back to our put wall. I'm gonna go out of the preferences. So if we wanted to look up a cube, I could click this lookup button, and this is going to show me the order that is tied to that particular cube I selected. So you can see this one. It's got its work control number. It's got its sales order tied to it. We could see the put wall it's at. We could see the put wall cube as well. We could see the last activity. And then we can also see items that are part of this order. So you can actually see this order has an item from zone 300 and 2 items from zone 100. So this is a perfect scenario for a put wall. Instead of sending someone to all 3 of these locations where one of them's on the complete opposite side of the warehouse, we probably have one picker or multiple pickers grabbing these 2 items from zone 100 and one person grabbing it from zone 300 and dropping them all off at the wall. And then the putter is going to be scanning these items and putting them to the wall. As they scan the item, it's going to say, if they scan this one, the 2287, it's going to say you're putting this to this cube in particular. If it was a lighted put wall, the light on that cube is going to light up as soon as we scanned this item. So it's going to have us put the highest priority orders together based on which item that we're scanning from the totes that were dropped off or the carts that were dropped off. So as we scan that item, it's looking at the wall and figuring out which order do I want to put this to first, which one is either closest to completing or which one has the highest priority point value. If we go back to our wall, we can see that one of them's flashing. That means that it's 50% done, or at least 50% done, which means that it's just an extra point of visibility to see which orders are almost completed within there. We also have this load put wall button. So if you have this on a schedule basically by percentage, we can also set it up on a timed period where we load it every, X amount of minutes or hours. We reload the wall. You also have this button to manually reload it, regardless of your schedule or your percentage. It'll look at eligible orders out there that we can assign to a cube and go ahead and assign them and release the picks to be completed and dropped at the wall. We also have the pending product, which is going to show us products that are still pending to be picked. We can declare different prioritizations of the put walls. Maybe we want certain put walls giving a higher priority point value to pickers than other walls. And then also we have the tote pending induction. So this tote pending induction, we can actually see all of the totes that have been dropped off and are waiting for their products to be inducted to the put wall. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll show an example of scanning one of these items and putting it to the wall. So again, if we look back at our put wall, now we're going to switch gears and we're going to go over to the mobile device and we're going to click on the put wall menu option. And this is a single side wall, so I'm going to use the put pull. Oh, sorry, I was doing a demonstration of this earlier. I was in the middle of a workflow when I logged out. Let me log back in and we'll do that. So we're going to go into the put wall. And it's going to ask us which wall are we putting at. So if you have multiple walls, this is our way of signing in. By the way, if you have multiple putters at a wall and you're using lighted walls, JASCI has had customers do colored lights. So you can actually find these light systems that do multiple colors. And then a user signs in as either pink or orange or green or whatever color they're going to have is the color light that they look for on the wall. So that way you can have multiple people putting on the wall and looking for the lights and not putting their item when someone else's light lit up. It'll do it based on a color system. So you just remember what color you look for, and then that's the cube you're putting to. It's a really cool system, actually. It gets very efficient if you have a high enough volume to want multiple putters at a wall. Um, let's go ahead and enter our wall ID, and now it's going to ask us what tote are we going to be putting items from. So this is part of our verification that we do. Rather than just scanning any product, we're going to make sure that it was something that was systematically picked and dropped off to us. So this is where we can go to our totes pending induction, and if we want to, we can find an LPN in here that we want to put. Um, So let's see. I'm gonna put let's see, I think let's go ahead and scan this LPN. So we're going to scan that LPN. Here's the product that's in it. Now it says that there were five totally in here and we have two remaining to sort. So if we go ahead and scan this product, it'll then look on the wall and figure out what cube we need to put this to. We can also say that this LPN is empty. Systematically, it doesn't think it is because it brought us on to scan the item from it. However, if it physically is empty, maybe someone said they picked it and they put the item somewhere else, and now we don't have the item in this LPN. We can hit empty LPN, and then that's going to recognize that one of those orders still needs that item or those items that were missing to be batched again and picked and dropped off. So there's a little bit of logic there if we say that this is empty. You'll see something similar at our pack stations where we can declare it empty, even though systematically it's not empty. So let's go ahead and scan our product. And this is going to say, hey, put this to PW demo A07. So we'll scan PW demo dash A07. Again, this would be a barcode that's on the actual cube, like right under the cube, right above it. And if this was a light, instead of having to look at this and see which cube to scan, we just simply look at the wall and press the button after we put it there. So we're going to scan our cube. This is going to ask us for a license plate number. So I'm actually putting the first item into this cube, this A07. So if we look at this one right here and hit lookup, you're going to see that here's the item that we're putting. We just put it there, but we have to assign a license plate number. It's because of the setting that I have on this PutWall. It's going to ask us to assign an LPN because this is the first item that we're putting into the cube. So we got to make sure we declare the tote that's there. Again, this LPN is going to be very helpful because now we're putting all of these items not only to its order, but to LPN that represents this whole order coming together. And that way at the pack station, we can simply just scan this LPN instead of having to scan all these products once more and verify that they're in there. We're already doing that verification in this put process. I apologize. I didn't have an LPN handy for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of my other LPNs that I have in the system. I don't keep my LPNs on putaway in this demo environment, so I'm going to go to one of my completed putaways and just steal that LPN. If you haven't seen our inbound webinars, we do some good ones on putaway. And when it comes to inventory, you can see if you have an LPN tied to that inventory record or not. So I'm just going to steal one of these LPNs. I apologize to bring you through that. And that's going to go ahead and assign that LPN to that cube. So now if we refresh our look at this cube on the detail, we can see that that LPN was applied there. And now it's wanting us to scan more products out of this tote. So if we still have that 2287, I think we had one more of that to put in here. If we scan that again, it's going to tell us another cube that's going to require that product. And then we're going to put it to that cube. Um, so that is our put wall process. If we're putting the last item in there, similar to how you saw it say, hey, let's go ahead and declare an LPN for the first put, for the final put for a cube coming together, it's going to say, bring this to pack. So you're going to confirm that you've pulled it and brought it to pack. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up the cubes to be green like this. And then based on if you have more orders that are getting loaded to it, whether you're doing the load put wall manually, if you have it based on a schedule, or if you have it based on that percentage and you've now completed below that percentage to reload the whole wall, that's how it's going to dictate when these green ones get another order assigned to them. And then, like you saw, if you're doing with an LPN control, as you put that new first item to that new order, it asks you for an LPN. Now, on our next webinar, to end this, I'm going to talk about the trouble station. So we're going to go there in a minute. But on our last webinar, or I'm sorry, on our next webinar, we're going to be talking about the pack processes. So we'll be talking about pack and ship, pack scan product, and pack singles. Typically, for a multi-line, multi-quantity order, you're going to use pack scan product where you have those multiple verifications. However, if you use the put wall, you can use our pack and ship option where you just simply scan that LPN that we've added to the cube. Typically, that LPN would be represented by a barcode on the tote that you put in the cube, and then you can simply bring that tote to pack, and they can scan that entire LPN to say they're putting everything in that LPN in a box. Or you can actually use the shipping boxes themselves as the totes, and you can use that LPN as like um, a just a label to make it easy to print the pack slip and the pack and the shipping label at the pack station. That way you don't have to do any reboxing. And JASCI is pretty strong in cartonization, so we'd be able to help with that if you wanted to put your shipping boxes in your PutWall cube. Um, all right, so let's talk about the trouble station before we finish this webinar. Um, Now, I talked about before if you have a PutWall cube that you need to send to trouble, you could do so. But you can also, during a pick process, which I think last week we did the picking webinar, let's say you're picking to a cart or picking to a pallet, and you hit the cut button, meaning you got to a location and you couldn't pick the item or the quantity of the item that you were supposed to. When you hit cut, JASCI will try to reallocate on the fly to another location that we can have you visit. If there's no more allocatable inventory available, what we'll do is send it to Trouble, which is typically going to be like a physical area that you go and you drop off your carts or your pallets where there's an item missing that you weren't able to pick. And these are typically operated by an inventory control person. So if we go to our trouble screen, we have our trouble station, we have our trouble work report by product, and then view trouble orders. I think we talked about view trouble orders in our order management webinar, whereas as orders come down, if we know we don't have enough inventory to allocate for it, or if there's an order hold or anything, a customer hold, anything that we can't release this to be picked, it gets caught in the view trouble orders, and you're able to have that. You could see how you want to release items from there. We'll have orders automatically released from there as we put inventory away. So it's kind of before the picking process. But if it's after the picking process, that's where, or during the picking process that we see trouble, it's going to go to the trouble station. Now, the trouble station is going to involve a workbench, which in JASCI that ties you to a label printer because you might be needing to print labels out in whatever you determine to do with these trouble orders. So we're going to sign into our TB01 JASCI workbench, and that's going to link me to a particular label printer. It's also going to be ensuring that the right people are signing into this job because you would assign your inventory control team that workbench. And then it's going to be where you scan the LPN of either the tote that was dropped off or the pallet that was dropped off. It'll have an LPN barcode that you can scan. If we're dropping off pallets, we'll actually print one out, so it makes it nice and easy. You just put that LPN barcode label to the pallet, and then your trouble station worker can simply scan it, and it brings them right to that trouble work. Or we can hit display all, and we can see everything that's actively in trouble. So if we looked at this one right here, and we can do a work lookup to see that work detail, or we can go select and start to see what was supposed to happen and what we'd like to have happen. So you can see this one, I was supposed to pick two. I only had one, so I picked the one, and now I have one remaining. So I can determine, let me expand this to be a little bit larger. So we can choose, do we want to back order a quantity of this, or do we want to repick it? If we want to repick it, do we want to split this and have it reallocate another pick that we can then combine with this order? Or do we want to manually go grab it ourselves and basically complete this order? It's up to the customer of how you want to, use your team. Maybe you want your inventory control person just simply us having the system reallocate it to somebody else. Or maybe you want them going and resolving it and not disrupting the pickers to just go get that last item to complete this order. Completely up to you. But if we say that we want to repick it and I say one, I can hit this manual button, and that's going to go out and see if I have a particular location with this item in it. And it'll check lot as well if there's a certain lot requirement. This one, I don't have lot on it, so it found a location for me that I can go to, and I have 100 of them in there, so I have plenty. So I can go pick from that if I'd like to. Um, if I hit split to reallocate, that's going to have the system automatically make that decision for me. And it's just going to create a new picking work for somebody else to perform and drop off. Um, so that's our trouble station. It's basically a way that you can manage these orders that get sent to trouble and figure out how you want to resolve that trouble. If you don't have that product at all, maybe you let it sit in trouble until you do have enough in there and you want to have your inventory control team go ahead and fix it. Maybe you want to say, maybe you're saying, okay, we're not going to get that product for a long time or ever. So maybe we back order a particular quantity. That's typically more up to your host system on if you want to be sending orders that are completed with missing lines or back ordered lines, or if you'd like to get, and some people like to send an order update that's going to have that change line. Some customers, they don't like to do back orders at all because it's not in their policy, and then they make someone, call the customer, and the customer has to agree to something different before they change the order. So you have different resolution methods. The trouble station is going to allow you to do all of those. So that's what kind of this station is for, is monitoring all of your trouble that comes through by either scanning the LPN or seeing the list of all of your orders that are in trouble. Now I have 23 different pallets or totes that are in my trouble station, which is not a good number. That's, you don't want to have that many. You don't want to have them piling up. So that's why we'll show you last activity date. We'll show you the work type. We'll show you things that you might want to see about it in this trouble station. So that's what we wanted to go over today was our put wall. Last week we talked about the picking methods with picking to a cart, picking to a pallet. Picking to a cart is usually the most common drop off for a put wall, where maybe you assign either the whole cart itself to get for the totes to be dropped off, or maybe it's certain totes on the cart are going to the put wall versus the pack station. But the put wall allows you to get really good efficiency for your picking process by batching items together and then having them simply sorted and consolidated to the orders that they go to at the wall. And then this trouble station is a way that you can catch all of those orders that pickers had issues with and choose how you want to resolve them. So if you had any questions on those, please feel free to reach out to us.